Well, Joseph, congratulations on getting DeFi Dev Corp sort of up and running now. This was born out of a takeover of Janover, which is a publicly traded software company focused initially on commercial real estate borrowers and lenders, and now investing millions of dollars into Solana. Talk us through what the sort of strategy here is and what now DeFi Corp, Dev Corp is trying to accomplish with Solana investments.
Yeah, thanks for having me. The high-level strategy is a treasury strategy company focused on Solana, and we've seen success similarly with other treasury strategy companies like MicroStrategy, now rebranded Strategy, which has accumulated Bitcoin and held it on their balance sheet since, I believe, late 2020. And we think Solana is kind of a up-and-coming asset. We think there's indicators that Solana could flip Ethereum by market cap, developer interest, transaction throughput, etc. Many metrics that make us bullish on Solana. And with the, I'd say, administration change and end of choke point 2, this strategy seems feasible from a regulatory perspective. So sort of the Solana growth narrative plus the changing regulatory landscape and opening up of public markets to more crypto-focused strategies, we think kind of comes together to make this play suitable.
Why did you choose Janover specifically? As I mentioned, previously software company focused on commercial real estate financing.
Yeah. Well, actually, the reason we chose Janover in the first place didn't have anything to do with what the business actually did, though we have come to know it better and appreciate it and think that it's a interesting business with a long-term growth potential and very good Q4 performance. But what drew us in the first place was the high insider ownership. Blake Janover, the previous CEO and the founder of the company, who has joined as chief commercial officer and remains on the board of the company, held over 50% of the common stock of the company, and that enabled us to buy controlling stake in the company in a single transaction, which from our perspective is the fastest way to get a controlling interest in a U.S. Publicly listed company. And this company is sort of unique in that regard, or was.
And so what of Janover's business will remain and continue to operate?
Oh, the entire legacy business is maintained and continues to operate. And like I said, we're actually pretty excited about it. And Blake, the founder, continues to run that core business. We've also retained Bruce Rosenblum, the CFO, and Bill Carrigal, the audit chair, on the board. And we're very happy, actually, about being able to keep those folks around, because the team that we've brought in are crypto veterans, I'd say very familiar with Solana and the kind of crypto ecosystem more broadly, but we have, I'd say, much less experience in the public markets. And Bruce, Blake, and Bill have been incredible for us. I mean, Blake took this company public. He wrote much of the S1 to take the company public himself. He's very creative. And Bill and Bruce both have over 20 years experience as either public company CFOs or audit chairs at publicly listed companies. And it would be incredibly difficult to do this without them.
Okay, I ask also because, you're changing the ticker symbol at a later date as well. So like a lot of the branding is going to be updated. And so for people who were looking for Janover at one point, of course, they'll have to now know you guys as DeFi Dev Corp. I want to just talk a little bit more about Sol. In your rationale for taking this approach, do you see Sol as a similar store of value as BTC? I talked to some folks who work very closely with Solana, and they often think of it as sort of gas for a car, something you need to use in order to pay for writing transactions to the network. That's not mutually exclusive, though, with it being a store of value.
Yeah. Well, I think Bitcoin is the long-term ultimate store of value. And, I was a Bitcoiner first, certainly, and I'm still a Bitcoiner. And I think the car analogy is appropriate. And I guess I theorize that Sol will be a store of value, but I guess the business functions whether it's a store of value or not. And we do anticipate increased demand for Sol over time for the purpose of, essentially gas on the Solana network.
Okay, so you kind of agree with the analogy. Also curious, what use cases for the Solana network you're most confident in, and how the adoption of those use cases, how they will be sort of related back to the token value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, on the token value, again, so whenever a transaction takes place on the Solana network, a gas fee essentially must be paid in the Sol token. And this is a very small fee, fractions of a penny for most transactions, or pennies for a very complex transaction. And the most important applications that I think exist for this stuff are the financial ones. So, if Bitcoin is money, and then the decentralized blockchain networks can act as financial systems that build on that decentralized and sound monetary system. So there are many applications, of course, for blockchain technology, from, logistics to memes to voting to all sorts of things that we could imagine where like a middle person or intermediary could be cut out and replaced with essentially a trustless system. But I think the largest shorter term opportunity is finance first, which is why we named the company DeFi, for decentralized finance.
So you've got 42 million now raised, and you've deployed about most recently 11.5 million. Your total Solana holdings now are around, you've got this much money raised. What is the deployment strategy of the investment?
Yeah, we plan to put nearly all of it into Sol and hold it on the balance sheet and stake it. And we've also announced publicly that we will acquire a validator, and then once we do that, we will stake the Sol that we've acquired to our own validator.
And what's the pacing? I mean, you've had a pretty rough year. Solana has, not you. Had a pretty rough trading year, plummeting more than 23% so far year to date. I mean, obviously a lot of volatility in general. But again, back to the question of how you will be spacing out the deployment of these investments.
Yeah, this is a bit of a tough one. So none of us can tell the future here, but we think the price level certainly over the last couple of weeks has been advantageous for us, and I suppose that's kind of played out in hindsight to right this minute say. And we have been aggressive, I would say, on the acquisition strategy to date. And I guess I'd leave the strategy open to pace of future acquisition, but we've definitely discussed like dollar cost averaging essentially over a much longer time frame to leg into our positions.
Just to touch on your description of the strategy thus far being aggressive, in what ways are you viewing the current that your current deployment as being aggressive?
Well, we wanted to get the initial fundraise into Sol quickly so we could signal to the market that we were moving fast and that we were going to actually do what we said that we were going to do, which was buy Sol and hold it. So that's what I meant by aggressive.
So let's talk more about the idea that you mentioned earlier, which was that this is something that's already been played out with MicroStrategy, now rebranded as Strategy. Is this a copy-paste version of that strategy here, just now using Solana and Sol?
Well, I actually think that would be a totally reasonable strategy, but that's not the long-term intention. My kind of read of the future is there will be many treasury strategy companies, crypto treasury strategy companies that enter the market across a wide variety of assets. And I think that they will have to compete on innovative approaches to their financial engineering, which MicroStrategy sort of pioneered with their convertible debt instruments and now the yield-bearing preferred stock issuance. But I think there'll be much more innovation on that kind of front for these treasury strategy companies. And then I think there'll also be differentiation that comes up around approaches to transparency and investor protection. So, for example, maybe in the future there could be like an in-kind redemption functionality where if the treasury strategy company traded below 1x net asset value, say, then investors could essentially redeem their shares for the treasury assets. Now, that's not in our roadmap, say, but I think it's an interesting idea, and I think there'll be a myriad of takes on these sort of approaches for treasury strategy companies in the next couple of years.
I know you're saying this might not be the long-term strategy, but are you thinking about this because you see that as sort of inherent characteristics missing from Strategy's kind of trajectory right now and thinking?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I'd hate to be critical of Strategy. I think Strategy and Sailor have been pioneers here, and I think they're doing a very good job. But they also haven't been, say, meaningfully threatened by competitors yet. And I think when that competition comes, then that will result in innovation that benefits shareholders.
Yeah, and we're not here to criticize, of course, but it was more a question of, were you seeing gaps? Because this is still a fairly new strategy for Strategy. And so, as you mentioned, there haven't been meaningful competitors. Do you see yourself now as a meaningful competitor?
To Strategy?
Or for investors looking for similar exposure and opportunities?
Yeah, I think I kind of have 2 points on this. I'd like to go back to just a bit on the previous question. I think that Strategy behaving the way they have to date is an outcome of the size, scale, attention, and sort of trust also that they've generated. And I think that they have actually handled their situation incredibly well. So maybe that was continuation on the previous one. And then kind of, do we see ourselves as a contender or alternative for investors? Yeah, we've only been around in the public market running the strategy for about 2.5 weeks now. And I don't think that the market has sort of adapted yet to how to price treasury strategy companies. So I'd like to see how that emerges. And then, I think we are an alternative, of course, but an investor might want to consider, Bitcoin versus Solana and kind of come to their own conclusion on what the investment path is for them. And I'd point to a few kind of key differences. One is Solana is much more volatile than Bitcoin. Solana has a native yield component that's associated with being a proof of stake asset. And for example, DeFi Development Corp will be able to stake its balance sheet SOL to its own validator, which will further increase yield over staking to a third-party validator. The market cap of Sol is much lower than the market cap of Bitcoin. I think it's like 1/20th, maybe. I'd have to look at the numbers to be very sure. So we think there's much more reflexivity in the price of Sol. So as DeFi Development Corp grows, raises more capital, invests it into Solana, as we've seen with MicroStrategy raising capital and investing into Bitcoin, it seems to be correlated with price increases in Bitcoin. One could imagine what, say, $1 billion investment into Bitcoin might do. Probably won't move the price much, but $1 billion investment in Sol could have meaningful impact on the price.
Right, and I know that, of course, it's only been 2.5 weeks, but we have seen MicroStrategy. I mean, this has been like almost a 5-year story as they've ramped up their Bitcoin holdings. So, we do have, I guess, that a little bit more history to lean on, and clearly that has guided your thinking and transitioning over here. So, really, that's sort of where the question was coming from. You've got other companies though coming to invest in Solana, which is Upexi, and they announced that they are raising $100 million. What does that say to you?
Well, I think it's validating, because if they are able to raise $100 million to invest in Solana in public markets, then that sounds bullish for all of us to me.
Now, if you look at the stock in the past month for Janover, DeFi Dev Corp now, it's up nearly 900% in the past month. That, I think, goes to also validate, right? I would imagine, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that this is another validation that people are hungry for an asset like this and an alternative maybe, and to your point, versus the Bitcoin play that strategy has. I wonder if more companies adopt this strategy, what does that ultimately mean for the way that people think about cryptocurrencies in general? Because now you have different ways of getting exposure, and we haven't even seen the biggest asset managers, retirement funds, 401ks getting into this. Is that what you hope as well, is that eventually you'll be maybe picked up into one of these bigger funds, and then many more millions of people will have access to this type of exposure?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I think we've seen this path with MicroStrategy, where they have been picked up in many of these funds now as well. And I think that that's likely to happen in the future for a large number of crypto treasury strategy companies.
Now, what kind of conversations do these sound like when you're talking to, eventually, and I don't know if are you having conversations with like a Blackrock or, these big fund managers that people have a lot of their 401k money tied up into?
I am not comfortable answering that one.
That's okay. I'm largely trying to get at how the economy might even be reshaped. Because now you're seeing, again, the introduction through third parties in many ways, because I'm not going to be directly investing into Sol or Bitcoin anytime soon. But by doing this, how do you think the economy might change? I don't know if you've given that any thought.
Yeah, I have given it a lot of thought, as my background is economics and monetary theory. So I'm pretty bullish on the long-term outcomes here of mass cryptocurrency adoption, whether it's through direct ownership of crypto in your own wallet with your own keys, or if it's through an ETF or a treasury strategy company or otherwise. I think so. I'll start with Bitcoin because I think it's sort of like the root of all of these systems, and then the financial system kind of comes on top of the monetary system. So with mass Bitcoin adoption and a kind of standing up of an alternative monetary system outside of fiat currencies, say dollars or euros, I think the bigger this system is and the easier it is for investors or even consumers who aren't investors, just regular people, then this alternative system becomes a viable route for like an escape essentially from inflation in a fiat monetary system. And fiat systems, almost by definition, must be inflationary because they aren't like the supply is not constrained. While in Bitcoin, a core tenet of Bitcoin is the supply constraint. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. So this has profound outcomes on a monetary system and an economy as a result that I think result in long-term stability and potential dampening of business cycles that result in booms and busts and recessions, and I think also drive us toward a market-driven interest rate system rather than a heavily government-influenced interest rate system, and all of these things are related. The Fed. There's a theory that the Fed's monetary policy around interest rates essentially causes boom bust cycles, and this is enabled by fiat monetary systems. So if we transitioned to, or if there was a great alternative that was widely available, then I think it's much more likely that a transition off of a fiat monetary system will occur. And I think we might see this on like a per country basis, maybe like Argentina's first or Turkey's first or whatever. But I think in the very long run, 20, 30 more years out, there won't be fiat monetary systems. There'll only be, say, Bitcoin or other sound money systems. And as a result of that, how government finances itself will change, and how companies and individuals finance will also change. And so essentially government can finance itself in a couple of ways now. Seigniorage, which is essentially value from printing new money, devaluing the currency, or taxes. And the seigniorage component will go away, which is actually a very significant portion of government financing. And if they can only generate value or gain value, not generate but gain, from taxes and from borrowing that eventually has to be repaid with taxes, we essentially enter like a age of government austerity, which I think will limit what governments are able to do significantly, and likely narrow their behavior to only what is popular, in that eventually Congresses and legislative branches or whatever will have to pass laws or approve taxes that pay for things that people actually want, generally speaking, in a country. And this is sort of one of the outcomes, or what I see as one of the outcomes of a sound monetary system. And
sorry, go ahead.
So I'm like one rant maybe. So what I think will happen from that is a reduction in essentially the occurrence of war and I actually believe that Bitcoin is the driver of a peace movement. And this is really what's gotten me into working on this in the first place. I've been researching, I'd say, monetary theory and individual liberty and peace for the last 20 years. And when I ran into Bitcoin in, originally 2011, but not really interested until 2013 when I sort of realized what it was, I said, wow, this has, world-changing potential, and ultimately we should think of this movement as a peace movement. And coming out of that, Bitcoin's the foundation, but on top of Bitcoin and other sound cryptocurrencies, there must be a financial system that is built where, because the legacy system is developed for the fiat, and we will see an alternative financial system, not just money, built around these assets. And I think Solana is the best place for that financial system to be built. I think it's being built in real time now, and I'm proud and happy to say that we are participating in that ecosystem and the development of, or the support of the development of those financial systems that I think are ultimately part of the Bitcoin peace movement.
So if I want to link this back to how we started this conversation, which is why you took over Janover and revamped the strategy in general, and that is because you see this move to being DeFi Dev Corp as being kind of the spark that ultimately leads to what you see as sort of a global peace movement and really general global participation in a more stable, or at least being with everyone bought in, democratized way of controlling interest rates, of controlling the flow of money, and having that stability versus what Jerome Powell has to do with his team all the time. Is that a good way to summarize sort of the importance of now this shift over from Janover to DeFi Dev Corp?
I think that's a very charitable take on what I said. Yes, I would love to say that we are, pioneering this movement, but I think realistically we're probably just only a small part of it.
You are, but as you know, I mean, with even MicroStrategy starting, it's inspired you, and it will surely inspire others. That's how movements begin. So I appreciate you being humble and calling it charitable. I'm trying to just sum it up for folks if they're tuning in later, wherever they're scrubbing through in this conversation. It was so fascinating to have you take me through all of this, Joseph, and I think there's going to be definitely a lot more to come. I know you're just, as of today, 2.5 weeks in. Would love to have you back on to check in the next couple of months and certainly over the coming years.